First contact. Captain Klex had never imagined that his routine observation assignment would lead to one of the most significant discoveries in xenomilitary studies. Standing at his post on the United Fleet Station Omega, his 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he watched the organized chaos below. The massive docking bay stretched before him, a testament to human Zexian cooperation, though right now it was testing everything he thought he knew about military structure. The Zexian alliance prided itself on its perfectly ordered military hierarchy. Every rank had its color, every position its place, and every order followed a precise chain of command. Purple for generals, blue for captains, green for lieutenants, it was beautifully simple. Or at least, it had been until first contact with humans 3 standard cycles ago. That first meeting, when a Zexian exploration vessel encountered a human mining operation in the Proxima Centauri system, should have been a warning sign. The humans had celebrated by sharing something called tequila with the Zexian crew, leading to an incident that remained classified. Though rumors still circulated about 2 Zexian admirals attempting to perform something called the Macarena. Klex adjusted his blue captain's indicators, ensuring they aligned perfectly with his exoskeleton. Below, a scene was unfolding that challenged everything he understood about military authority. A human battle cruiser, the HSS Nightingale, had just docked. Its commander, Captain Sarah Parker, wore the proper insignia that Klex had meticulously documented in his studies. Everything seemed normal until that moment. A shorter human female in white garments approached the scene. She wore no visible rank indicators, no color coding, nothing that would suggest any authority in a proper military structure. Yet what happened next nearly made Klex drop his datapad. "Captain Parker, these wounded need to be moved now." The white-garbed female's voice carried across the deck. "Your cargo can wait." Klex's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. In the Zexian military, such insubordination would result in immediate disciplinary action. His research assistant, junior observer Zep, moved closer, antenna twitching nervously. "Sir, are you recording this?" Zep whispered, his scales shifting to a pale green of confusion. But before Klex could respond, he witnessed something even more extraordinary. Captain Parker, a decorated officer with 15 years of service according to Klex's records, simply nodded and immediately redirected her entire loading crew. "Yes, document." "Right away, Doc," Parker responded, showing deference that should be reserved for superior officers. Klex frantically searched through his database of human military rankings. Nothing in his extensive research mentioned this mysterious Doc rank. His confusion deepened when Admiral Chen, who had just arrived on scene, stepped aside when the Doc raised her hand and declared, "Coming through." "Got critical patients here." "Zep," Klex said slowly, his voice trembling with academic excitement, "I believe we've just discovered a significant gap in our understanding of human command structure. This Doc appears to hold some sort of invisible authority that transcends normal military hierarchy." The implications were staggering. In the following days, Klex dedicated himself to observing this phenomenon. He documented dozens of similar incidents, Docs giving orders to high-ranking officers, reorganizing military operations, and even countermanding direct orders when something called medical necessity was invoked. His research took an unexpected turn when he encountered Dr. Emily Chen, the white-garbed human who had first caught his attention. She was treating a Zexian engineer who had suffered minor burns during a joint maintenance operation. "Fascinating," Klex muttered, watching her work. "You possess no visible rank indicators, yet your authority seems absolute." Dr. Chen looked up from her patient, amusement flickering across her features. "Authority? I'm just doing my job, Captain Klex. When people are hurt, rank doesn't matter much." This concept was revolutionary to Klex. Authority without visible indicators. Power based on function rather than hierarchy. He needed to understand more. His investigation led him to establish regular observation sessions in the medical bay, much to the bemusement of the human medical staff. He watched as doctors and nurses, all wearing the mysterious white garments, moved through their duties with an efficiency that rivaled Zexian precision, despite their apparent lack of rigid hierarchy. The situation became even more complex when Klex witnessed an incident involving a human general who refused to follow a doc's orders regarding rest periods for his troops. The resulting confrontation introduced him to another mysterious human concept, something called a medical override. "Sir," Dr. Chen had said firmly to the general, "I am invoking my authority as chief medical officer. These troops are showing signs of severe fatigue, and I am ordering mandatory rest periods. This is non-negotiable." The general had attempted to protest, citing operational necessities, but Dr. Chen simply pulled out something called a medical regulation manual and pointed to a specific section. The general's face had turned an interesting shade of red, but he complied. Klex's report to Zexian High Command about this incident caused quite a stir. The concept of a non-military authority having power over military operations was unprecedented in Zexian society. Several high-ranking officials suggested that this might be a security risk, but Klex argued differently. "The humans have developed a sophisticated system of checks and balances," he explained in his report. "These docs serve as guardians of their warriors' physical and mental well-being, ensuring the long-term effectiveness of their fighting force." As Klex delved deeper into his research, he began to notice patterns. The doc's authority seemed to stem from something humans called the Hippocratic Oath, an ancient code that preceded their modern military structure. This revelation led to an even more startling discovery: there were other similar power structures within human military organization that operated outside the traditional chain of command. His research was interrupted by a station-wide announcement: a joint human-Zexian military exercise was being planned, and all senior officers were required to attend a briefing. As Klex made his way to the briefing room, he couldn't help but wonder what other surprises human military structure might hold. Little did he know, his discovery of the doc's authority was just the beginning. The exercise would introduce him to several other mysterious ranks and positions that would challenge everything he thought he knew about military organization. But most importantly, it would lead him to understand that sometimes, the most effective authority comes not from visible indicators of rank, but from expertise, dedication, and the trust of others. As he settled into his seat in the briefing room, Klex noticed Dr. Chen entering, immediately causing several high-ranking officers to shift in their seats. He quickly activated his data recorder. Whatever happened next, he was certain it would add another fascinating chapter to his growing study of human command structures. The first day of observation had raised more questions than answers, but one thing was certain: the humans had developed a command structure far more complex and nuanced than anything the Zexian Alliance had encountered before. And somewhere in this complexity lay secrets that could revolutionize how both species approached military organization. Klex's antenna twitched with anticipation as he prepared to document whatever new surprises awaited him. The study of human military structure was proving to be the most challenging, and exciting, assignment of his career. The mystery of the Master Chief and Supply Sergeant. Captain Klex's antenna twitched nervously as he reviewed his latest findings about human military structure. His discovery of the doc's mysterious authority had only scratched the surface. Now, 2 weeks into his expanded research mission, he had encountered something even more perplexing: the enigmatic figure known as Master Chief. "Commander Blitz," Klex reported via secure channel to his superior, "I believe we've identified another power anomaly within the human command structure." The commander's holographic image flickered slightly as he leaned forward. "Another one? More powerful than these docs you've been studying?" "Different," Klex clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "The humans have this position called Master Chief Petty Officer. On their rank charts, it appears to be a non-commissioned position, yet." He trailed off, his scales shifting to a pale blue of confusion. "Yet what, Captain? I witnessed one yesterday." A human admiral, purple rank equivalent in our system, stopped mid-sentence when this Master Chief cleared his throat. Just cleared his throat. The admiral then completely changed his tactical approach based on nothing more than a raised eyebrow from this individual. Commander Blitz's antenna drooped in confusion. Impossible. Their own documentation shows these chief positions as subordinate to commissioned officers. That's what makes it so fascinating, sir. Klex's eyes blinked in rapid succession with excitement. Their real authority appears to operate on an entirely different spectrum than their visible rank structure. I've begun calling it the practical authority paradigm. Klex pulled up his observational footage from the previous day. The scene showed a strategic planning session for joint fleet operations. Master Chief Ramirez, a weathered human with more service hash marks than Klex could count, had stood silently through most of the meeting. But when a young lieutenant proposed a new loading procedure for joint operations, the Master Chief had simply coughed quietly. The lieutenant immediately stopped talking, turned slightly pale, and revised his entire proposal. Even more remarkably, 3 other officers in the room nodded approvingly at this exchange, as if some invisible communication had occurred. "There's more, Commander," Klex continued. "I've also encountered another powerful entity within their structure, the supply sergeant." Commander Blitz's image flickered again as he shifted uncomfortably. "The ones who control their resource distribution." "Yes, sir. But there's so much more than that." Klex brought up another recording. "Watch this exchange." The footage showed a human colonel approaching a small office marked "Supply." The colonel's uniform bore numerous decorations that Klex had learned indicated high achievement in combat. Yet as she approached the supply sergeant's desk, her demeanor changed subtly. "Sergeant Martinez," the colonel said, her tone notably more diplomatic than what Klex had observed her using with other subordinates, "about that requisition for the new tactical communications equipment." The supply sergeant, a compact human with a perpetual look of mild skepticism, didn't even look up from his terminal. "Form 2789B wasn't filled out correctly, Colonel. And I'm still waiting on the verification signatures from last month's inventory. But this is critical for the upcoming joint exercise dash." "Everything's critical, ma'am. Forms still need to be filled out properly." The sergeant finally looked up, his expression unchanged. "Would you like me to show you how to complete them correctly?" The colonel, whose authority should have far exceeded a sergeant's, simply nodded. "Yes, please." "Thank you, Sergeant." Klex paused the recording. "Do you see, Commander? These supply sergeants appear to possess some form of bureaucratic authority that transcends normal command structure. They control access to everything from weapon systems to something called printer paper, which, despite seeming insignificant, apparently causes major disruptions when unavailable." Commander Blitz's antenna twitched in agitation. This defies all logical military structure. How can they maintain effective command with these authority anomalies? "That's the truly fascinating part, sir." Klex's eyes gleamed with academic excitement. "It appears to work because of these anomalies, not despite them. The humans have developed an intricate web of formal and practical authorities that actually enhance their operational efficiency." Klex's research over the next few days revealed even more complexities. He documented how Master Chiefs seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to appear exactly where they were needed, often before anyone realized they were needed. They rarely gave direct orders, instead using a complex system of subtle coughs, raised eyebrows, and quiet suggestions that somehow carried more weight than formal commands. The supply sergeants, meanwhile, operated what Klex came to think of as an entire shadow authority structure based on their control of resources. Their power stemmed not just from their ability to provide or withhold supplies, but from their intricate knowledge of the bureaucratic systems that governed everything in the human military. "Sir," a young supply sergeant had explained to Klex during an interview, "it's not about the forms. It's about making sure everything is accounted for and everyone gets what they need to do their job. Sometimes that means being creative with the paperwork." This concept of creative paperwork led Klex down another fascinating research path. He discovered that supply sergeants maintained complex networks of relationships based on mutual favors and exchanges. A skilled supply sergeant could apparently acquire almost anything through these networks, though they remained mysteriously vague about their methods. The relationship between Master Chiefs and supply sergeants proved especially intriguing. Klex observed several interactions where these two power centers collaborated in ways that seemed to bypass the entire formal command structure. A raised eyebrow from a Master Chief, a knowing nod from a supply sergeant, and suddenly equipment would appear, troops would be reassigned, or problems would simply disappear. "It's like watching a dance," Klex reported to Commander Blitz. "Each knows exactly what the other needs without explicit communication. They've developed some sort of symbiotic relationship that enhances their individual authorities." As Klex compiled his findings, he began to understand that human military structure was far more sophisticated than the Zexian alliance had initially believed. It wasn't just about ranks and chains of command, it was about relationships, experience, and practical knowledge. The implications for joint operations were significant. The Zexian military would need to adapt its interaction protocols to account for these unofficial but crucial authority structures. They would need to understand that sometimes the person with the most practical authority in a situation might not be the one with the highest visible rank. But just as Klex was beginning to think he had a handle on these complexities, he encountered yet another mystery, something humans called Senior NCOs, and their mysterious power to make even high-ranking officers nervous with nothing more than a disappointed look. His antenna twitched with anticipation as he prepared to dive into this new avenue of research. The human military structure, it seemed, had endless layers of complexity waiting to be discovered. The Great Coffee Incident. The day of the Great Coffee Incident began like any other on United Fleet Station Omega. Captain Klex was updating his research notes on human command structures when the first signs of trouble appeared. His sensitive antenna picked up an unusual change in the station's atmosphere, a subtle shift in the normal morning buzz of activity. "Sir," Junior Observer Zepp approached his superior, scales shifting to a worried gray. "I believe we may have a situation developing in the main mess hall." Klex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Clarify, Observer." "Well, sir, you remember that efficiency initiative we implemented? The one where we replaced the humans' morning coffee with our nutritionally superior algae smoothies?" Klex felt his scales begin to pale. The efficiency initiative had seemed logical at the time. After observing humans consuming vast quantities of a bitter brown liquid every morning, the Zexian logistics team had determined it was simply a suboptimal nutritional delivery system. The algae smoothies provided superior hydration and a more balanced nutrient profile. "What's happening in the mess hall, Zepp?" "Sir, I believe the humans have noticed." The scene that greeted them in the mess hall would forever be seared into Klex's memory. A group of human sergeants stood around the beverage dispensers, their expressions growing increasingly desperate as green liquid flowed where their precious coffee should have been. "What is this?" Master Sergeant Sarah Chen, no relation to Dr. Chen, held up a cup of the green liquid, her voice carrying that dangerous quiet that Klex had learned to associate with imminent diplomatic incidents. A well-meaning Zexian nutritional officer stepped forward. "We have upgraded your morning beverage to a more efficient nutrient delivery system. The algae blend provides 47% more vitamins and dash." He never finished the sentence. Master Sergeant Chen slowly placed the cup down and pulled out her personal communication device. "Supply?" "Yeah, it's Chen. Remember that favor you owe me? Time to cash in. Full coffee embargo on all Zexian requisitions until further notice." Klex's antenna went rigid with horror. He had learned enough about supply sergeants to know that this was very, very bad. Within hours, the effects began to ripple through the station. Suddenly, Zexian officers found their equipment requisitions lost in processing. Maintenance requests for Zexian quarters were under review. Even requests for basic office supplies were met with a mysterious new form, request for beverage contingent resource allocation, Form 7389, c. But the real crisis began when the human doctors got involved. Dr. Emily Chen stormed into the station commander's office, where both human and Zexian leadership had gathered to address the growing situation. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she demanded, waving a medical data pad. "I've got dozens of humans reporting headaches, fatigue, and mood disturbances. This is a medical emergency." Klex watched in fascination as the familiar authority of the doc rank came into play, but this time tinged with something he had never observed before, caffeine withdrawal-induced fury. "But doctor," the Zexian Nutritional Sciences chief protested, "our studies show the algae blend is superior in every measurable way." "Superior?" Dr. Chen's eye twitched slightly. "Let me explain something about human biochemistry and the importance of maintaining established nutritional patterns." What followed was a 20-minute lecture that had several Zexian officers' scales turning interesting colors. Klex recorded every word, marking this as yet another example of how human medical authority intersected with military operations. The situation reached its peak when Chief Master Sergeant Rodriguez entered the fray. He didn't say a word, he didn't have to. He simply stood in the doorway of the commander's office, slowly sipping from a personal thermos that Klex's sensors indicated contained real coffee. The message was clear: the chiefs had their own supply networks, independent of official channels. And if this situation wasn't resolved quickly, they would not share. Station Commander Harrison, a human admiral with decades of experience, recognized the severity of the situation immediately. "Captain Klex," he said, "I believe this would be an excellent opportunity for some cultural exchange. Perhaps you could explain to your logistics team why maintaining certain human dietary customs might be beneficial for station morale." Klex's antenna drooped in acknowledgement. "Yes, sir. I believe I begin to understand. Observer Zep, please instruct maintenance to restore the original beverage dispensers immediately." The crisis was eventually resolved, but not before Klex had gathered enough data for 3 new chapters in his ongoing study of human command structures. He had witnessed the intricate interplay between medical authority, supply chain influence, and the mysterious power of senior NCOs, all centered around a simple brown liquid. In his report to Zexian High Command, Klex emphasized several key findings. Human dietary customs, particularly those involving coffee, should be considered critical to operational stability. The informal power networks within human military structure could mobilize faster than official channels when sufficiently motivated. Never, under any circumstances, get between a human sergeant and their coffee. But perhaps the most interesting observation came from an unexpected source. As the situation was being resolved, Klex overheard a conversation between a junior human officer and a seasoned supply sergeant. "I don't understand," the officer said. "How did you organize an entire supply embargo so quickly?" The supply sergeant smiled mysteriously. "Sir, the first thing you learn in this job is that everything runs on coffee. The second thing you learn is how to use that fact to your advantage." Klex added a new section to his research notes: hypothetical alternative command structure, coffee as currency. The implications were fascinating, but he decided that perhaps some aspects of human military organization were better left unstudied. The Great Coffee Incident, as it came to be known, served as a valuable lesson in cross-species military cooperation. It demonstrated that understanding the unofficial power structures within human military organization was just as important as knowing the official chain of command. It also led to a new addition to the station's cultural orientation program, a mandatory session on human dietary customs, with particular emphasis on the sanctity of coffee. Klex himself taught the first session, his antenna twitching slightly whenever he noticed Master Sergeant Chen in attendance, her coffee cup held like a warning beacon. As things returned to normal on the station, Klex couldn't help but feel that he had witnessed something profound. In the face of a perceived threat to their coffee supply, humans of all ranks had united with remarkable efficiency. Perhaps, he mused, there was something to learn from this about motivation and morale in military organizations. But those were thoughts for another day. Right now, he had a requisition form to fill out. Apparently, his office supplies wouldn't be released until he signed something called a Coffee Recognition and Respect Agreement. Joint Military Exercises and New Discoveries. The morning of the first major joint human-Zexian military exercise dawned with what Captain Klex had learned to recognize as organized chaos. After the coffee incident, he'd become much more attuned to the subtle rhythms of human military operations. Today, however, would test everything he thought he knew about their command structure. Operation Shared Horizon, as the exercise had been dubbed, was designed to integrate Zexian and human forces into cohesive combat units. In theory, it should have been simple. Each species would follow their clearly defined chain of command. In practice, Klex was about to discover an entirely new layer of human military complexity. The first surprise came during the pre-exercise briefing. A human female in combat fatigues entered the room, and Klex noticed something odd. Her uniform bore no significant rank insignia, yet she carried herself with unmistakable authority. His antenna twitched with interest as she began to speak. "Good morning. I'm First Sergeant Martinez, and I'll be coordinating ground operations for this exercise." Klex's fellow Zexian officers shifted uncomfortably. According to their understanding of human ranks, a first sergeant should defer to the many officers present. Instead, she proceeded to reorganize the entire exercise plan with calm efficiency. "Sir," Klex whispered to Commander Blitz, "I believe we're witnessing another authority anomaly. This first sergeant appears to be what humans call a senior non-commissioned officer, or senior NCO. But where does their authority come from?" Blitz clicked his mandibles in confusion. "Their rank structure clearly shows." "Watch," Klex interrupted, as a human colonel raised an objection to one of First Sergeant Martinez's suggestions. The first sergeant didn't argue. She simply turned to the colonel and asked, "Sir, how long have you been in command of ground forces?" 3 years, the colonel replied proudly. "I see." Martinez nodded. "I've been coordinating ground operations for 22 years. Perhaps we could discuss the practical implications of your suggestion." The colonel's face went through an interesting series of expressions before he simply said, "Carry on, First Sergeant." Klex frantically updated his notes. This was a form of authority he hadn't fully documented yet, the power of experience, somehow trumping formal rank structure in certain situations. The exercise itself revealed even more complexities. Klex watched in fascination as human units operated with what appeared to be complete disregard for proper chain of command, yet achieved remarkable efficiency. A particular incident caught his attention. A young human lieutenant was attempting to coordinate a joint maneuver between human and Zexian forces. The operation was proceeding according to protocol until a gruff voice called out, "Hey, sir. Got a minute?" The speaker was a human staff sergeant, technically several ranks below the lieutenant. Yet something in his tone made Klex's antenna quiver with interest. The lieutenant turned, and Klex noticed an almost imperceptible shift in his posture. "What is it, Sergeant Morris?" "Well, sir, speaking from experience, if we move the Zexian heavy weapons team to that ridge instead of the valley, we might avoid what happened in last month's exercise. You know, when half the squad ended up covered in that fluorescent training paint." The lieutenant's eyes widened slightly. "Ah, yes. Good point, Sergeant. Let's adjust the position." Klex had witnessed something remarkable. A subordinate had effectively countermanded a superior's orders without ever actually giving a direct order. The technique was subtle yet devastatingly effective. As the exercise progressed, more examples of this mysterious authority structure emerged. Klex observed how human NCOs seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to appear exactly where they were needed, often before problems arose. They moved through the battlefield like conductors in a complex orchestra, guiding, suggesting, and occasionally delivering what Klex had learned to call the disappointed parent look. But the most fascinating discovery came during a simulated emergency scenario. A joint human-Zexian unit was attempting to secure an objective when communications suddenly failed, part of the exercise parameters. The Zexian officers immediately looked to their command structure for guidance, but the humans did something unexpected. A gunnery sergeant, another rank that defied conventional authority structures, simply stepped forward and began coordinating the operation. No orders were given, no chain of command was invoked. Instead, the gunny, as Klex heard them called, used a complex system of hand signals, meaningful glances, and what appeared to be telepathic communication to keep both human and Zexian forces moving smoothly. How? Commander Blitz demanded later, reviewing the exercise footage. How did they maintain command and control without clear authority indicators? Klex's eyes blinked in sequence as he considered the question. Sir, I believe we've been approaching this from the wrong angle. Human military authority isn't just about rank, it's about what they call, being salty. Salty? Blitz's antenna drooped in confusion. Like the mineral? No, sir. It's a human term that seems to indicate a combination of experience, competence, and what they call, been there, done that, attitude. These NCOs, particularly the senior ones, possess a form of authority that doesn't need rank indicators. Their authority comes from knowledge, experience, and the respect they've earned. The exercise continued for several more days, each one revealing new layers of complexity in human military structure. Klex documented everything, how human NCOs could communicate entire battle plans with just a series of grunts and eyebrow movements, how they seemed to materialize out of thin air whenever a junior officer was about to make a mistake, and how they maintained order through a complex system of informal authority that somehow worked better than formal command structures. One particular incident stood out. During a complex joint maneuver, a human private first class, one of the lowest ranks, spoke up during a planning session. "Excuse me, Sergeant Major." The Sergeant Major, a towering figure whose very presence made officers nervous, turned to the private. "What is it, son?" "Well, I was thinking about the terrain layout, and it reminded me of something my grandfather told me about a similar situation in the Battle of Sigma 6. What followed was a 10-minute discussion that completely changed the exercise strategy. The private suggestion, filtered through the Sergeant Major's experience and authority, was transformed into a tactical innovation that even the Zexian observers had to admit was brilliant. This incident led Klex to another important realization: human military authority wasn't just top-down or bottom-up, it was omnidirectional. Good ideas and effective leadership could come from anywhere, provided they were validated by experience and practical knowledge. As the exercise drew to a close, Klex found himself revising many of his initial assumptions about human military structure. The complex interplay between formal rank, practical experience, and what humans called street cred created a command system that was far more flexible and resilient than the Zexian model. In his final report on the exercise, Klex included a new section titled "The NCO Shadow Command Structure." In it, he attempted to explain how human non-commissioned officers maintained a parallel authority system that somehow enhanced rather than undermined the official chain of command. But even as he compiled his findings, Klex couldn't shake the feeling that there were still more mysteries to uncover in the human military structure. His antenna twitched with anticipation as he prepared for the next phase of his research, something humans called weekend duty, which apparently involved yet another entirely different command structure. Integration and understanding. 6 months after beginning his study of human military structure, Captain Klex stood before the Zexian High Command, his antenna twitching slightly as he prepared to deliver his final comprehensive report. The chamber was filled with the purple-marked generals and admirals of the Zexian fleet, all eager to understand the mysteries he had uncovered about their human allies. "Esteemed commanders," Klex began, his scales shifting to the formal presentation blue, "what I am about to share will fundamentally change how we approach joint operations with our human counterparts." He activated his holographic display, showing a complex web of interconnected lines and nodes. This is not, as you might expect, a map of human command structure. This is what I call the authority web, a dynamic system of power, influence, and practical capability that exists alongside their formal military hierarchy. The assembled commanders leaned forward, their antennae quivering with interest as Klex began to explain the culmination of his research. We began this study thinking we would simply document their rank structure and chain of command. What we discovered instead was something far more sophisticated. The humans have developed a military organization that operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Klex brought up footage from various incidents he had documented, the docs exercising their medical authority, Master Chiefs altering battle plans with a raised eyebrow, supply sergeants controlling the flow of resources through mysterious networks, and NCOs maintaining order through what he had termed tactical suggestion deployment. But the true breakthrough in our understanding came when we stopped trying to force their system to fit our preconceptions, Klex continued. The human military doesn't just function despite its apparent chaos, it functions because of it. He highlighted a particular incident from recent joint operations. A human maintenance sergeant had discovered a critical flaw in a Zexian ship's engine design. Instead of filing a formal report that would have taken weeks to process, she had activated what Klex now understood was the NCO network. Within hours, the information had spread through channels that didn't officially exist, reaching every ship in the fleet and preventing potential disasters. This informal communication and authority structure allows them to adapt and respond to situations faster than any rigid hierarchy could, Klex explained. But here's the truly remarkable part. It strengthens their formal command structure rather than undermining it. To demonstrate, he showed another recording, this time of a joint training session where a human staff sergeant was teaching Zexian troops about battlefield adaptation. Sometimes, the sergeant had said, the book answer isn't the right answer. That's when you need what we call tactical creativity. A Zexian officer had objected, but how can you maintain order without strict adherence to protocol? The sergeant's response had illuminated another aspect of human military philosophy: protocol exists to serve the mission, not the other way around. The best NCOs know when to bend the rules and when to hold the line. Klex advanced his presentation to his most controversial finding. Distinguished commanders, I believe we must reconsider our approach to joint operations. Instead of trying to impose our system of visible rank indicators and rigid hierarchy, we should learn from the human model of practical authority. He outlined his proposals: integration of experienced NCOs into Zexian units as advisors, adoption of certain human informal communication networks, and most radically, the creation of what he called flexibility zones in the Zexian command structure. But how can we maintain discipline without absolute adherence to hierarchy? One general demanded, his scales flushing purple with concern. Klex had anticipated this question. He played his final piece of evidence, footage from a recent crisis where a joint human Zexian crew had faced a catastrophic system failure. The human NCOs had seamlessly integrated with Zexian officers, creating an adaptive response that saved both ship and crew. What we perceived as chaos is actually a highly sophisticated system of checks and balances, Klex explained. The humans have created a military structure that combines the stability of formal hierarchy with the adaptability of practical experience. He concluded his presentation with a series of recommendations for future joint operations, including recognition of informal authority structures alongside formal ranks, integration of human-style NCO mentorship programs, adoption of flexible response protocols, creation of cross-species training programs focused on adaptive leadership. As Klex finished his presentation, the chamber was silent for a moment before erupting in a chorus of clicking mandibles, the Zexian equivalent of intense discussion. He had given them much to consider. But the true validation of his research came a week later, during a joint operation that could have ended in disaster. A young Zexian officer, faced with an unprecedented technical crisis, did something that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. He turned to a human Master Chief and said, "What do you think we should do?" The Master Chief's solution, delivered with characteristic understatement, saved 3 ships and their crews. More importantly, it demonstrated that Klex's research had begun to bridge the gap between 2 very different military cultures. In his final entry in the research logs, Klex wrote, "Perhaps the greatest lesson we can learn from human military structure is not about authority at all, but about trust. They have created a system where experience and capability are valued alongside rank, where practical knowledge flows freely across formal boundaries, and where the mission's success takes precedence over rigid adherence to protocol." As he watched human and Zexian forces working together with increasing efficiency, Klex realized that his study of human military structure had led to something far more valuable than just understanding their command system. It had created a pathway for true integration between their species. His antenna twitched with satisfaction as he added one final note to his research. In the end, the most effective authority comes not from rank insignia or color codes, but from the respect earned through competence, experience, and dedication to the mission. The humans understood this all along. We're just beginning to learn. The success of the integration program led to an unexpected honor. Klex was asked to develop a new training curriculum for joint operations. As he prepared for his first class, he couldn't help but smile at the title the humans had suggested for the course, Understanding Practical Authority, a guide to getting things done in joint operations. His first students would include both human and Zexian personnel, and he planned to begin with a simple question: what really makes someone a leader? The answers, he knew, would go far beyond any rank insignia or color code.